How's it going, guys? My name's Graham and welcome to Two Left Thumbs. Today I'm doing a new Who Is comic book video for Red Guardian. A huge sigh of relief for David Harbour's career, as we'll be seeing him playing the Red Guardian, kind of Russian Captain America, in Black Widow, May 2020. Somewhat unintentionally, this is about the longest my beard's ever been, so I guess I can say I'm doing it in honor of David Harbour. Throughout this video, I'll look at things like what we can expect from the character in the upcoming movie, a little bit about the history of the character, their development, their personality, some of their powers and abilities, important storylines. I'll have links somewhere right around here, timestamps in case only one particular subject interests you. The movie's due out May 1st, 2020, and will be directed by Australian filmmaker Kate Shortland, who up until now is pretty much just known for small, kind of indie darlings. Lore, Somersault, Berlin Syndrome. It's the usual type of up-and-coming talent that Marvel likes to pluck up when they're prime for the taking. If things go well, they could have a lengthy career with Marvel, working on other movies, shows, and series. It's written by Eric Pearson, who's been a very frequent collaborator of Marvel's, previously contributing to Thor Ragnarok, Agent Carter, and Avengers Infinity War and Endgame. Speaking some about the character of Red Guardian. Throughout the comics, several people have held the mantle of Red Guardian, but in Black Widow, we will be getting the most prominent one, Alexei Shostakov. And yes, I'm aware of the mild irony of David Harbour playing a character named Alexei. Alexei Shostakov is the original character to have the name Red Guardian, although canonically, they are not the first Red Guardian. It is eventually revealed that the original is Aleksey Lebedev, but in the comics timeline, that would have been back around 1945. For the sake of this video, I will be focusing on Alexei, not Alexei. I'm sorry, there's not an easier way to go about that. I have a cat in the room whining for attention, so I guess she's hopping up for a little while. Everyone say hi to Misty. I'm not sure if Alexei and Alexei are intended to have different pronunciations. Sometimes people will see Graham and assume it's meant to be said differently. It's not. It's the same name. I'm guessing Alexei is the same. But ignoring Lebedev, there was never much revealed about him in the comics anyways. We're unlikely to see him in the movie in any form. Shostakov, which I guess I can primarily refer to him as, operated as an acclaimed test pilot and KGB agent, before being trained as what is essentially Captain USSR, their attempt to make their own Captain America. Although the character and the use of the name Red Guardian did carry on past the fall of the Soviet Union. Stupid tale. And she's off. That was attention enough. I'll be interested to see how the movie works around the character's close ties to the Soviets, because a lot of the skills that he presented in the comics came battle-tested through World War II. I really doubt our movie version is going to be upwards of 90 years old to make that work. He was never a super soldier like Captain America, he is just a highly trained individual, so he shouldn't have any sort of slowed down aging. Being a decorated pilot and war hero was a huge part of him being selected for the program that made him into Red Guardian, and so I guess he can primarily just be a secret operative rather than a prominent, well-known public figure. In the comics, this training program was initiated by Soviet Premier Khrushchev during the heights of the Cold War, bringing in even more real-world historical ties, which I think is a cool thing that comics do from time to time. Alexei was chosen over Yuri Gagarin, who would go on to become the first man in space. Instead, I'm sure the MCU will just make him a Russian soldier instead of Soviet, maybe shifting the timelines that his predecessor Lebedev was a World War II soldier, and Shostakov is the more modern successor. A bit more on his character history, Alexei was actually married to Natasha Romanoff. They lived together in Moscow. Natasha we obviously know as Black Widow, but at the time she was also a prominent, famous ballerina. After being chosen for training, the Soviets faked Alexei's death during a rocket test session. The truth of his death was kept hidden from everyone, including his wife, Natasha. It's revealed that this had been a coordinated, arranged marriage, and the faked death that came afterwards, they were being used as tools of the KGB to manipulate both parties. They saw value in Alexei and Natasha, and by bringing them together and tearing them apart, they were able to control both of their lives. At first, this worked exactly as intended, giving them the freedom to completely train Alexei in secret. Obviously, he was already a capable individual, but they were bringing him up to that superhero tier. Simultaneously, this drove Natasha further into the Red Room service training. Win-win for the Soviets. But Black Widow eventually becomes disillusioned with the KGB and defected to the United States, while Red Guardian goes a bit more in the other direction, becoming a ruthless and somewhat vindictive fanatic, wholly loyal to the Soviet Union. It is my suspicion they will have not been married in the movie timeline. Perhaps their lives were quite closely entangled. Maybe there was a setup where they were intended to be married and never went through. I'm curious to see. Maybe on paper they were married, but their hearts were never in it. They knew it was like a governmental business decision. I don't want to spend a ton of time on the character stuff because I doubt a lot of it is making it into the movie. Next up, powers and abilities. As previously established, Alexei is an expert pilot, a very effective spy, and a great contributor to the operations of the KGB. He was hand-selected for this additional training that made him a master of hand-to-hand combat. So he's a very capable fighter and generally a highly skilled athlete, although he has no superhuman strengths or powers to speak of. Similar to his American counterpart and inspiration, he carries a metal disc, not dissimilar to a shield, but also not very similar to a shield. It's certainly not made out of adamantium or vibranium or anything like that. It's just kind of a steel disc that attaches to his belt and is attracted to him through strong magnetic forces. Don't ask me why every other metal object in the room doesn't come flying towards this guy's waistband whenever he walks in the room. Comic book magic, logic, who knows? Really just kind of serves as a really garish belt buckle. This was the original version of things. They eventually moved away from this stupid little discus and gave him a shield that was much more similar to Cap's. I don't think it's actually ever stated what that little disc was made out of, but the shield he eventually uses is a type of steel alloy compound of some kind, but no fictional elements or metals. If this item or weapon, if you want to call it that, is utilized in the movie in some way, which based on the fact that Taskmaster is seen using a shield, potentially replicating either Red Guardian or Captain, based on the setting of the movie, likely Red Guardian, I really hope Natasha makes fun of him for what an inadequate tool that is compared to what she's used to seeing Rogers with. And typical needy cat fashion, wandered back in the room, whining away yet again. The development of the character. When did they first come about? Through what storyline? Who were the creators? All that sort of stuff. Red Guardian first appeared in 1967 in the Avengers number 43, created by writer Roy Thomas and artist John Buscema, a pair who also gave us Vision, Ultron, Dane Whitman, M'Baku, and Valkyrie. Thomas contributed to plenty of other major characters on his own: Wolverine, Carol Danvers, Ghost Rider. While Buscema has other major credits, they're not quite as lofty as those three. John co-created characters like Nebula, Mephisto, and Prowler. The pair created many more characters together and even more as separate contributors. I just thought it would be fun to underline how important they've been to Marvel's roster as a whole, including characters that are now already present in the MCU or are destined to be added soon. The Cold War and Soviet foils to our well-known heroes was a common trope in the Marvel comics back when they were being written in the 1960s. The Hulk had Abomination, Iron Man had Crimson Dynamo, Spider-Man fought against another Spider-Man who ended up being the Russian agent Chameleon. While we've seen Abomination, and we've potentially seen Chameleon, that's yet to be confirmed, I think this will be a really interesting way to explore such a direct mirror of one of our well-known characters. We've already seen it repeatedly where the villain of a given film is just a copycat of our hero, so Red Guardian existing like Russian Captain America without Steve Rogers actually being present in the movie could make for some really interesting storytelling parallels. Although, I wouldn't rule out a Chris Evans cameo. When Natasha and Steve eventually show up in the Avengers movies, they've clearly been on the run and working together, so it's not entirely impossible that he pops in at some point in this movie, but likely, same as Iron Man, they probably want to give the character a bit of a rest before playing around with any timeline jumping like that. Too much emotional whiplash to suddenly have that character on screen again, especially while they're actively trying to set up the next Captain America. Fun fact, if Chris Evans does show up in this movie at all, he will have appeared as Captain America at least once per year for 10 straight years. That's a hell of a record to hold. Moving on to some of the important storylines with Red Guardian throughout the comics. I mentioned he was introduced in an Avengers comic. They first run into Shostakov in China, working for communist Chinese agent Colonel Ling. This man, Wei Ling, was actually Natasha's boss during her time in training when she thought that Alexei was dead. While Ling is over here pulling the strings with Natasha, he was also the one in charge of the program training Alexei to become the Red Guardian. Training / indoctrinating, brainwashing, that all kind of came as one. On this mission, years after his supposed death, it's Natasha who recognizes him, and when she calls him out on it, he doesn't even remotely attempt to pretend it isn't him, or to pretend that he hasn't been alive this whole time. He's so far in at this point that he becomes deeply embittered at the prospect that his once wife has defected to the United States, working alongside American superheroes. Who could think of such a thing? but he's not a character totally beyond redemption or without a moral code. He's not really a villain by choice. After a major super-powered confrontation, this Chinese base begins to crumble down around them. Colonel Ling attempts to take advantage of the chaos of the situation and aims to shoot Captain America in the back as they're fleeing. Shostakov views this as a cowardly act, rejects what Colonel Ling is doing, interferes, and sacrifices himself, meanwhile saving Captain America, Black Widow, and the other present Avengers. No, it's not an epic diving in front of the bullet bodyguard moment as much as we all wish that it was. It's more that he struggles with Colonel Ling, sacrificing himself with the building collapsing around him. Normally this section of the videos is quite a bit longer. This guy has not been around a whole lot. As I mentioned early on, there have been multiple characters to hold the mantle of Red Guardian, beyond the first two Alexeys. Many of them have had similarly limited runs as the first two. They're barely worth bringing up. And yet, there it is, I just did it. Who knows, maybe someday we'll meet other Red Guardians in the MCU. We're already getting introduced to multiple Black Widows, it seems, so we'll see how that all shakes out. I'm going to count this as still part of important storylines, but I'm starting to kind of predict a little bit of what might be seen in the movie or in the future of the MCU. They're crisscrossing in a way that I'm gonna carry on with. If Alexei doesn't die in this movie, then I hope so much that there is at least the tiniest hint of a tease to Winter Guard. If Red Guardian is Russia's answer to Captain America, then Winter Guard is their team-up answer to the Avengers. It's been a recurring problem that these movies either take place in New York or in space. Yes, they've started to move beyond that the tiniest bit, but we really need to expand that a lot further. A lot of Winter Guard fans are still quite raw over the use of Whiplash in Iron Man 2. Was he the worst character? I don't know, maybe not. Did he love Boyd? Yes. Do I still wish that he was Crimson Dynamo instead? Absolutely. Whiplash and Crimson Dynamo are two completely separate, distinct characters in the comic books. What we saw was a very lame version of Crimson Dynamo with Whiplash's name for some reason. I get it, I guess it fit within the movie, but I really hope that they didn't step on their own toes and stop themselves from being able to properly use Dynamo in the future. I loved Omega Red back in the day. He was so dope in all of the animated series. Please, Marvel, give us a Winter Guard movie led by Red Guardian with Omega Red as the villain. While researching this video, I put that thought in my own mind, and it's all I want, and I had to put that idea out there. Let's talk a little bit about this upcoming movie and what we could expect from Red Guardian in Black Widow, specifically this year, and the MCU as a whole. I just pitched my own little wish list there, but there's more things that we can infer and expect from this without having to kind of go off in the weeds making up our own theories. The MCU's timeline has Steve Rogers on ice well before anything like the Red Guardian would have been established, but I love the idea that even after that incident, the world's first superhero continued to inspire others globally. So perhaps Red Guardian wasn't made to come up and match Steve Rogers, but was instead inspired by him. Captain America was out of the picture for a really long time. Obviously, other heroes like Hawkeye and Black Widow were operating before he was brought back, so it would make sense that a training program like this could have carried on and could have spun out multiple Red Guardians. Maybe this movie can even allude to the idea that the original Lebedev was being trained at the time Captain America was out there kicking butt. Things kind of fell through, it didn't quite work out, they dropped the program and revived it sometime later. It's clear from the trailer that Harbour's version of the character is a part of this team alongside Johansson, Pugh, and Wise, going so far as to call them family. This trailer is already channeling Mission Impossible in a lot of ways. I guess they wanted a little hint of Fast and the Furious in there too. We know that he hasn't donned the costume in quite some time, being surprised that it still fits. I like the way that this is hinting at the idea that there was a league or team of masked superheroes existing in the time Cap was on ice, operating in secret before it became more popular to be out in the open post-Iron Man. We've already seen a hint of this with Ant-Man and the Wasp being barely documented agents with people having suspicions and conspiracy theories surrounding these two heroes. They were out there doing their spy missions. It makes sense that other countries were taking a similar approach. Well before the public superhero was the norm, there's this MCU period of the 1970s where we have these secret superhero operatives. Even characters like Goliath were supposedly out there. The Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, which maybe gives us a hint of a time of when this particular team or family would have dissolved. Both Scarlett Johansson and Natasha, confirmed by Zola in The Winter Soldier, were born in 1984, meaning that she would have only been 7 years old in 1991, seemingly confirming that the Soviets will either have no part in the story or that maybe these are remnant programs that carried on beyond that time. It'll be interesting to see if they separate all of this from the Soviets entirely or maybe retcon that 1984 birth date as being inaccurate. After all, the character in the comics is closer to 100 years old, but hasn't aged normally due to scientific experiments run during the course of her training. I don't think this is the route they'll go, but this movie could sprinkle in the idea that maybe Natasha is super in some small way, maybe even unbeknownst to her. They could have lied to her about when her actual birthday was. I think that's a bit much, especially this late in the game. The character is all but retired. I don't think they're going to do anything like that. It's just going to be heavily altered from the comics. That's much simpler. There's so much that I want from this character in the future, both as my general love for David Harbour and the fact that even in his very limited screen time in this trailer, he's already a bit of a scene stealer. There's such a limited basis for this character in the comics that the sky is really the limit for where both the creative writing team and David Harbour, from an acting perspective, choose to go with this character. Speaking of some of the Mission Impossible stuff, we even get an homage to Henry Cavill's fist reload from Mission Impossible Fallout. The charm and those seemingly endless possibilities are why people are already gushing over this character and eager to see a long tenure from David Harbour in the MCU. But with a heavy heart, I'm gonna say right now, he's for sure gonna die. Not just because sacrificing himself for the sake of others, it's a role his characters seem to quite frequently serve, but just look at him. Look at that and tell me this character is gonna live through this movie. We're already so immediately attached that it's gonna be an emotional gut punch for the audience, and it's really gonna rally the team together. So pour out some cheap vodka for Alexei Shostakov, the Red Guardian, one film in the MCU. I sincerely hope that's not the case, because obviously I want to see Winterguard, but I'm highly suspicious that they're gonna kill him off. Usually these videos are a little bit longer, a little bit more complicated. There's just not that much foundational stuff to go off of for this character in the comics, so we'll try and keep things nice and tight and quick here. Figured people might be curious what the hell this character may or may not be in the movies. Are you guys excited for Black Widow? Are you excited for David Harbour as Red Guardian? Do you think that he will persist in the MCU and we'll see him in other movies? Is Black Widow going to persist in the MCU? Who the hell knows what's going on there? I have a lengthy list of other characters who are coming up in new TV shows and DC and Marvel movies and other comic book related things that I plan to do other videos like this on. I already have one recorded for Alejandra Jones that I'm working on. Let me know if you guys have any suggestions for other characters you'd like to see. I'll have some end cards here for other videos like this, as well as other broader superhero comic book conversations. I would really appreciate it if you guys checked out my Sony Marvel Spider-Man merger theory. I think that video was a lot of fun and very nerdy, even nerdier than this. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you again soon.